On that chilly autumn morning in New York, Ethan simply wanted to buy a simple gift. Nothing fancy, nothing designer, just something that would remind him of how ordinary life could be, before money, before loneliness. But what he found inside that small corner store would change everything. The millionaire was shocked to discover a saleswoman who looked exactly like his ex-wife. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Her eyes, her restrained smile, even the way she fixed her hair, everything was exactly like Grace. Was it a coincidence, a trick of the mind, or was fate trying to tell him something he'd pretended not to hear for years? Ethan didn't know it, but that encounter would be the beginning of a turning point that would test everything he believed about love, guilt, and forgiveness. If you enjoy stories that defy logic and touch the heart, like and subscribe to the channel. What's next will surprise you. Before that day, before that store and that look that completely disarmed him, Ethan Mitchell was the picture of American success. A household name in the tech world, owner of companies that turned over millions of dollars every month. Mansions in Los Angeles, luxury cars, dinners with politicians and celebrities. On the outside, he looked like a man who had won the game of life. But on the inside, the board was already in ruins. What no one saw was the silence. The kind of silence that echoes even inside Manhattan's largest penthouses. The kind that sets in when money buys everything except true companionship. Ethan always told himself he'd done it all for love. For a love that had ultimately slipped through his fingers. Grace, his ex-wife, had been the only person who made him feel human. But he lost her the same way he lost so many other things. Trying to prove he was invincible, time passed, and success became an addiction. He no longer worked out of necessity, but rather out of distraction. Endless meetings, empty parties, trips that felt like escape. Luxury became anesthesia. He surrounded himself with people, but none of them really looked at him. And sometimes at night, sitting facing the illuminated cityscape, Ethan would ask himself, what's the point of conquering the world if in the end you have no one to tell about your victory? It was strange how even the sound of applause began to grate. Everything that had once represented triumph now felt like failure. The man who had everything actually had nothing to sustain him. He had power but no peace, money but no rest. And love? Love was just a distorted memory amidst the champagne flutes and million-dollar contracts. There were days when he would look at his reflection and see a stranger. His beard was always clean-shaven, his suit impeccable, his Swiss watch ticking away. A time that, ironically, he no longer felt passing. The watch turned, but he remained still. Ethan had become a slave to his own freedom. Perhaps that's why, on that seemingly ordinary morning, he felt the urge to do something ordinary. Walk alone through the streets, buy something simple, smell the coffee and the rain. He wanted to remember who he had been before everything went wrong. And it was exactly this decision that led him to that store, even that woman, until that mirror of the past that would make him face himself again. But what had happened? Between him and Grace? What had caused such intense love to turn into silence? In the next chapter, you will understand why Ethan's heart was never the same again, and if this story has already captivated you so far. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because the next parts will move you even more. Grace wasn't the kind of woman who caught your eye at first sight. She didn't need it. He had that rare presence that commanded calm. Her serene gaze, her restrained smile, her firm voice, it was the opposite of everything that surrounded Ethan in his world of excess. Perhaps that's why he fell in love. Grace represented the balance he'd never had. They met when he was just starting out, before fame and the cameras. She worked in a small bookstore, and he stopped by whenever he wanted to escape the hustle and bustle of meetings. She talked about books like she talked about life, with sweetness and depth. Ethan, accustomed to superficiality, was enchanted. The first time he took her out to dinner, he promised that one day he would give her anything she wanted. Grace smiled and replied, "I just want you to stay you." Little did she know that in time, that would be exactly what he would stop being. With success came excess, And with excess came absence. Ethan began trading home-cooked dinners for gala events, heartfelt conversations for million-dollar contracts. The man she loved began to disappear behind the businessman the world applauded. Grace tried to understand. She tried to believe it was just a phase. But phases don't last years. And as the lies began to pile up, small at first, almost innocent, she realized she was sleeping next to a stranger. There was one night in particular that marked the end. A party in Los Angeles, with businessmen, models, and flashbulbs everywhere. She saw him from afar, smiling at another woman with the same look that had once been hers alone. It was then that something inside Grace simply snapped. The next morning, she packed her bags, left a letter, and left. She asked for nothing. No alimony, no explanation. She took only what money couldn't buy. Dignity. Ethan only realized the extent of what he had lost when silence filled the house. Every room seemed to scream her name. The laughter faded. The smell of coffee vanished, and even the sound of the rain seemed heavier. He tried to look for her, but she had disappeared. She had changed cities, her number, her life. Grace didn't want to be a memory. She wanted to be a thing of the past. For a while, he convinced himself she would return, that every great love deserved a second chance. But the months turned into years, and time only reinforced the emptiness. It's curious how success, when not shared, begins to lose its flavor. Ethan's money bought trips, parties, comfort, but not forgiveness, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw a man who had conquered the world and lost what mattered most. Sometimes, love doesn't end because of a lack of feeling, but because of an excess of ego. And when pride speaks louder, the heart falls silent. But fate has its own ways of reopening stories we thought were closed. If this story has touched you, leave a like and comment below. Do you believe that love can survive time and mistakes? It was an ordinary morning, the kind of day when nothing seems to happen, and yet, precisely because of that, everything can change. Ethan walked the streets of Boston, trying to escape the noise of his own mind. The light rain wet the asphalt and created small reflections of the city lights. He felt something different, an almost childlike impulse to do something simple, human. It was then that he saw the window. A small shop, almost hidden between two old buildings. On the fogged glass, a handwritten sign announced a sale. And for some reason he couldn't explain, Ethan walked in. The sound of the bell at the door was the soundtrack of fate. The smell of coffee mixed with paper and wood brought a strange sense of familiarity. He walked up to the counter, and when he looked up, time stood still. There she was, Grace, or at least it seemed to be. For a few seconds, he simply didn't breathe. His heart raced and his entire body went still. The woman before him had the same skin tone, the same serene gaze, the same way she tucked her hair behind her ear. It was as if the years had melted away. But there was something different too, a calm, a lightness that Grace never had in the end. "Can I help you?" she asked with a delicate smile. The voice. It was the same, identical. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. His mind struggled between reason and astonishment. Was it possible? Was she pretending not to recognize him? Or had time done to him what the mirror had done for years, show him only what he wanted to see? He tried to speak, but no words came out. He just mumbled, "Yes, I'm looking for a present." She smiled again, walking to the shelf, and each step seemed to reopen a memory. The touch of her hands, the smell of her perfume, the sound of her laughter. It all came back like a wave. As he watched, Ethan felt overcome with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Guilt. Why would fate place him there, in front of the woman he destroyed, as if nothing had happened? But there was one detail that confused him even more. She was wearing a name tag with another name, Emily, a name he had never heard before. But the face, the gestures, were hers. The confusion was so great that Ethan began to believe he might be living in an illusion. The exhaustion, the stress, the remorse, all blended into one waking nightmare. But when she turned and looked him straight in the eye, something in him snapped. The same gaze that had once loved him now gazed at him with kindness and ignorance. He bought the gift, paid without looking at the price, and left the store like someone running away from a ghost. Outside, the cold wind woke him. The world continued to spin, but inside him, something had stopped. As he walked aimlessly through the streets, a question kept running through his mind. What if she had never left? What if everything I lost was right there in front of me, trying to start over? What Ethan didn't know was that fate still held a revelation capable of turning his life upside down. If you want to find out who that woman really was and the secret behind their encounter, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Because what comes next will surprise you. All night long, Ethan couldn't sleep. Her face, or rather her, remained in his mind. Emily, that was the name on the name tag, but nothing about it convinced him it was real. He needed to understand. He needed to see it again. The next morning, he returned to the store. This time, without any excuse. The doorbell rang again, and Emily looked up with the same professional smile. "Good morning, sir. Have you come back to exchange the gift?" Her voice cut through the air like a vivid memory. Ethan hesitated. Part of him wanted to tell the truth, confess his feelings, ask if she was Grace. But another part, perhaps the most wounded, dreaded hearing a no. "Actually, I forgot to get the receipt," he replied, trying to sound casual. As she searched for the paper, he watched her silently. The way she moved, the way her hair fell over her shoulder, even the way she frowned as she thought. It was all the same. But there was a sparkle in her eyes that Grace hadn't had in recent years. A sparkle of someone who still believed in people. "Can I ask you a question?" he ventured. Emily looked up, curious. "Of course. You have a sister?" She frowned in surprise. "Yes, I do. Why?" Ethan felt his heart race. The confirmation came like an invisible blow. He tried to continue. "It's just, you reminded me of someone. A lot." Emily smiled slightly, not understanding the weight of that sentence. "My sister and I have always looked very similar. Some people even get us confused." Her smile was calm, but there was something mysterious, almost sad about it. "She lives in another city now. We haven't spoken in a while." That answer was enough for Ethan to lose himself in memories. Time seemed to rewind. Grace's face, the fights, the goodbyes, the empty house. And now there before him, a woman with the same face, the same tone of voice, and the same pain in her eyes. He wanted to say he knew his sister. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to explain. But fear paralyzed him. How can you say that he was the reason for the distance between them? "I understand," he simply said. "Sometimes people lose each other." Emily sighed, resting her hands on the counter. "Yeah, and sometimes it's pride that pushes love away." Those words struck Ethan like an arrow. It was as if she knew, as if, somehow, she spoke with Grace's own voice. The silence that followed was heavy. They both just stared at each other, as if searching for answers they didn't have the courage to ask. For a moment, the world seemed to fit within that gaze. Neither of them said anything else. And sometimes, silence says what words can't. Before leaving, he took a deep breath and said, "It was good to see you, Emily." She smiled gently. "Come back any time, sir." When the door closed, Ethan felt something inside him shift. He couldn't explain why. But this woman, so identical to his ex-wife, had rekindled a fire he'd thought extinguished. The desire to understand, to make amends, to apologize. But what Ethan didn't yet know was that Emily was hiding a secret that would change everything. A secret that would make him confront his past in ways he never imagined. If you're already hooked on this story, leave a like, comment on what you would do in his place, and subscribe to the channel, because the revelation that follows is simply unbelievable. In the days that followed, Ethan couldn't get Emily out of his head. Every memory of Grace blurred with every detail of the woman before him, and the lines between past and present began to blur, until finally he resolved to uncover the truth. He needed to know, did Emily simply resemble Grace, or was there something more hidden? He returned to the shop late in the afternoon, sunlight streaming through the windows, turning everything golden. The bell rang, and Emily looked up with the same calm smile. But there was a difference. Today she seemed more open, as if sensing something was about to happen. "Emily, can I talk to you?" Ethan asked, his voice low, almost trembling. She nodded, leading him to a small room at the back of the store. There, among shelves of books and antiques, Ethan felt his heart race. He was about to discover something that would change everything he believed. "I need to be honest with you," Emily said firmly. "You haven't met my sister. In fact, you've never met her. She moved away years ago and you're looking at her now." Ethan swallowed, uncomprehending. "What?" Emily took a deep breath. "I'm Grace's twin sister." The revelation fell upon him like an invisible blow. Everything made sense, and yet at the same time nothing did. The face, the gestures, the way she spoke, and all those memories that seemed to come back like a slow-motion film. Ethan was silent. There were no words for the shock he felt. Emily continued, "She always told me about you, about what happened, about how you changed, and about the pain you felt. But she never imagined you'd show up here one day. I didn't know I'd see you either." The weight of guilt he'd carried for years seemed to triple. He'd planned to apologize to Grace, but now he was standing before Emily, someone he should never have met, and still felt he owed her an apology. I just wanted to understand," Ethan began, trying to organize his words. "I needed to know if there was still a chance to fix things." Emily looked at him with piercing eyes, and in that instant, he realized something Grace never said. Life wasn't about making amends for the past, but about acknowledging what it had caused. The weight of his choices, the impact of his actions, the void left by pride and ambition. It all lay before him, silently but overwhelmingly. "Sometimes," Emily said, "people have to find their way alone. And sometimes fate uses strangers to teach us the lessons we don't learn from the ones we love." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and pain. On the one hand, he knew Grace was safe and happy. On the other, he faced the harsh truth. He had lost the one he loved most. But there was something more, an opportunity for growth, for learning, and perhaps, who knows, a form of redemption. If you think this story has already reached its climax, brace yourself. The real reunion is yet to come, and it will test every fiber of Ethan's courage and regret. Ethan felt he could no longer run from the past. Discovering that Emily was Grace's twin sister only intensified his desire to face the truth, to finally face the woman he loved and lost. Every step toward the town where Grace lived seemed guided by an invisible thread of destiny. When he arrived, the city felt both familiar and strange. The streets reminded him of places he'd walked years ago, and every detail stirred dormant memories. He knew there was no going back. There was no room for deception. It was time to confront what he'd avoided for so long, and then he saw her. Grace walked through a park, the setting sun illuminating strands of her hair, dancing in the wind. She looked different, more mature, more composed, but still the same woman who had once stolen his heart. Ethan's heart raced. Everything inside him screamed, and for a moment he thought he could run away again. But her gaze, that same gaze he remembered in every detail, stopped him. He knew there was no turning back. He approached slowly. Each step seemed to take an eternity. "Grace," he said, his voice thick with emotion and regret. She stopped, staring at him. The silence was intense, almost palpable. No words were needed immediately. Her eyes spoke for them. Ethan could feel the distance of the years and the force of each decision that separated them. "Ethan," she finally said, as softly as ever, but now firmly. "You're back." They walked side by side, unhurried. Words were chosen carefully, long pauses allowing each emotion to be felt. Ethan apologized, acknowledging the mistakes pride and ambition had made. Grace listened, not with resentment, but with the calm of someone who understands that some wounds only heal with time. Comparisons swirled in his mind. Before, he wanted to conquer the world. Now, he simply wanted to regain the peace he'd lost. Before, he believed that money and status could replace love. Now he understood that nothing is more valuable than what has been lost and what one longs to regain. They didn't need long explanations. Their reunion was filled with glances, sighs, and understanding. A silent forgiveness, an acknowledgement that the past couldn't be erased, but that the present could still be lived consciously. Ethan finally learned that fate didn't punish. It only demanded what was inevitable: responsibility for choices, courage to face mistakes, and humility to accept the consequences. After reuniting with Grace, Ethan finally understood something all the money in the world couldn't teach him. Wealth is no substitute for human connection, and success without love is just loneliness, disguised as glory. Every luxury, every achievement, every accolade now seemed empty compared to what truly mattered. He spent days reflecting on his life. He compared the expensive cars with the bicycle he had once shared with Grace, the extravagant dinners with the simple coffees they drank together. The contrast was harsh but revealing. Life, he realized, is not measured by bank balance, but by the moments we share with those we love. Ethan also understood that the past is not an enemy to be defeated, but a lesson to be learned. He carried years of regret, but now he saw that each mistake served to shape him, to make him appreciate what truly matters. Grace, in turn, showed that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about accepting and moving on. She continued her life, yet she offered Ethan something he thought impossible: understanding without bitterness. The millionaire then realized that fate isn't cruel, it's precise. Every encounter, every coincidence, every obstacle served to teach something that no amount of success can buy. Lost time never returns, but learning, that's what can transform an entire life. Ethan now walked with a new perspective. He learned that money can buy comfort, travel, and fame, but never the essence of time spent with those we love. He understood that true wealth is the opportunity to connect, to make amends, and to live in the present with awareness and gratitude. If this story moved you and made you reflect on choices, love and time like it now, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments what the most important lesson was for you. Because stories like this remind us that what truly matters can never be bought, and so the cycle closes. Ethan hasn't regained his past, but he has gained something even more valuable: understanding, growth, and the chance to avoid repeating the same mistakes. The millionaire, who once believed he had it all, discovered that the greatest fortune in the world is understanding the value of every moment and every person who passes through our lives.